Okay, flat earth proponents have a lot of really lame arguments for their so-called lines of evidence that the earth is actually flat. But in this video, I'm going to address perhaps the dumbest of those reasons. Actually, it is the dumbest. But before I get into it, I want you to look at this. This is Google Earth. And here we are looking at the Western Hemisphere. All right. Notice you can't see any of Asia or Australia. All right. This is essentially the Eastern Hemisphere. This is essentially the Northern Hemisphere. And this is essentially the Southern Hemisphere. Notice that the Southern Hemisphere has a lot less land than the Northern Hemisphere, all right? And Antarctica is not a nation and it's not owned by anybody, okay? Just keep that in mind and the general images I just showed you. All right, now I'm going to begin the PowerPoint presentation. Okay, this is the most accepted model that flat earthers have for the for what they believe the Earth looks like. They believe it's a flat disk, and that the North Pole is at the center, and that Antarctica is some sort of ice wall around the edge of the planet. That's why the water doesn't fall off. And they sit there and say the fact that Antarctica isn't owned by anybody and that there aren't a lot of people there, that's a line of evidence for the Earth being flat. Now, I don't see how any sensible person could come to that conclusion, but believe it or not, that's not their dumbest argument for a flat Earth. It's up there, but it's not the dumbest. Yes, the UN flag. They actually think the UN flag is a line of evidence for flat Earth. Okay, these are just some images of the model of the flat Earth. This is an older one. This movement began in the 19th century and died out, and since 2012 it's come back for some unknown reason, and most of the proponents seem to be in Florida. And that should say something about Florida. But the models aren't consistent, okay? And that's just a cute one I like. I put that up there. This is one that models the Earth basically as a snow globe. So I guess if you shake us up, we're sitting on somebody's desk, huh? And this is just something to illustrate how the sun... The flat earthers think that the sun orbits the Earth above the flat disk like this, and it acts like a spotlight. But this diagram shows how you cannot do that with a single light source. I mean, during the summer solstice, it would kind of work, but when you get to the equinoxes, you can't make this light pattern, this daytime light pattern, without this disk having a third dimensional component to it, a curvature to it. And this just makes no sense. You can't have this with a single light source projecting this light pattern on a flat disk without some sort of either multiple stars, and I'm pretty sure we do not live in a trinary star system. We just have the sun. You can't do this without massive barricades and reflectors around, and I think someone would notice if we had reflectors around, laying around on the planet, but we don't. But anyway, so here it is. This is the UN flag, all right? It was adopted in 1946, okay? And if you look at it here, this is what we call a North Polar Projection, okay? You are taking essentially the round Earth, remember I showed you Google Earth, and you're trying to represent it on a flat surface, the flag, okay? Now, what is the best way to do that? Now, you got to remember some things about the UN. The UN is supposed to be an all nations equal organization. So they want to represent everybody. And the UN has members all over the world. All right. So if I were just to show the Western Hemisphere here, or the Northern, or the Eastern, or the Southern, I'm going to leave people out. And human beings being human beings, they're going to complain about that. They want to be represented. It doesn't matter how big they are, how small they are. They just want representation. Okay. And so they decided to go with this. And if you notice, Antarctica isn't on here. This border only goes down to 65 degrees south latitude. Okay, and Antarctica isn't on here because it's not a nation. All right, it's not a UN member. All right, and there's no sense to put it on there because it just isn't necessary. All right, now they think that this is the UN's way of, it's like the UN saying, haha, gotcha. You know, they're hiding evidence of the flat earth in plain sight, like, haha, fooled you, which makes no sense and is kind of childish in its whole thought process. But I'm going to get into why that's not even entertainable. All right. This is just a stylized representation of a North Polar projection. Okay. North America, South America, Africa, Eurasia, Australia. Okay. That pretty much takes care of everyone. Now, if you notice here, this is the universal symbol of peace. It's two curved olive branches. So they put that around the North Polar projection because they want to portray peace. But if you notice, olive branches don't really look like this, and I don't hear anyone going around saying that there's an olive branch conspiracy. But anyway, this isn't even the original design. Okay, just remember this for a second. But first, I'm going to just show you that just because somebody draws something on something doesn't make it an actual literal representation. I know a lot of flat earthers believe what they believe because of the Old Testament, and they believe the Old Testament is word for word truth. Well, most things humans do are not word for word truth. They're representations. They're symbols. That's just how we are. Okay. So I drew this, okay? All right. Now, just because I drew this doesn't mean that there's actually pot-smoking aliens abducting some guy while the devil dances under the pale moonlight. All right? It's a stylized drawing I just did on a whim, okay? It doesn't mean anything. Just because I drew it doesn't make it real, okay? Doesn't mean this ever took place anywhere in the history of ever. It's a drawing, all right? But to be more on topic here, we stylize maps all the time. And I know most people don't understand how to take a global Earth and represent it on a flat surface. You have to distort it, and the UN flag actually does that. But this will give you more concept. Say that I draw this map for a friend. Okay, say we both know where this is and their house is here, but they've never really gone here. They've never really gone from their place to the rock, and they want to know how to get there. Okay, so I draw this map. All right, this is their house. They take this trail to the big old oak tree, and then they follow it here to the bridge, cross the bridge over the creek, walk to the big rock, and that's where I'll meet them. Okay, but this is by no means an actual representation of how the ground looks in this area. I mean, this oak tree is not that much bigger than this house, all right? This says 950 feet. See how small that is on that trail? This trail only says 420 feet, and it's longer, okay? And then you got the bridge over the creek and the road, and this says 500 feet, and it's not likely that this rock is this big. This is not to scale, okay? There's distortion here. I mean, there's not even a north arrow on this thing. This is just a drawing to show you how to get from your house via the oak tree across the bridge to the rock so I can meet you. It's not meant to be a literal depiction of this area wherever this is representing, okay? It's just so you have an idea of what's going on, okay? And the present UN flag isn't even the original concept. It's not even the original design, all right? This is the 1945 prototype that was conceived in California. Now, if you look at this, it is also a North Polar projection. As you can see, they had the double olive branch. They always wanted that up there. But if you notice, this doesn't go down to 65 south latitude. I think this is probably 45 or 50 here. It cuts off part of South America, cuts off part of Australia. Now, the North Pole is at the center, but it kind of shows favoritism to the U.S. and North America because it's kind of like front and center. So they decided to not ultimately do this, and they went with this. This doesn't really show any favoritism. They use the prime meridian here, which is a good thing to use, and the North Pole, which has no land, is at the center. Okay, so it's a good neutral representation, yet it shows all the major land masses on the planet. All right. Okay, they could have used another projection, like a Mercator projection here, but the problem with this is the distortion's, number one, it's really big. Number two, distortion increases in this type of projection from the equator to the poles, because you cannot take a round object like a globe and just make it on a flat piece of paper. You've got to distort it somehow, because you're taking a round three-dimensional object and modeling it on a flat two-dimensional surface. So as you can see, Antarctica looks enormous here. And this isn't a very good size for a flag. I suppose they could have cut it off and left Antarctica off. But there's other problems with this projection as well. It's pretty hard to get the universal symbol of peace around it. In order to do that, you'd have to cover up Western Canada, all of Australia, good part of Asia, Russia, and I'm sure everyone that lives there would complain about it. Okay, so this isn't a viable option, really. They could have gone with a self-polar projection, but there's problems with this. I mean, yeah, obviously the olive branches fit around it, but as I said earlier, Antarctica is not a nation. It's not owned by anybody. Why would you put it at the center of anything? It doesn't even need to be on here. Okay, not to mention this kind of distortion people aren't really familiar with. I mean, Greenland here looks as large as Africa, yet it's only in reality 1/8 the size of South America. And if you look at Eurasia, it's just stretched out. Even North America is grossly exaggerated. I wonder why the flat earth proponents don't use this model. Oh yeah, I guess because the water would flow off or something. I don't know. But anyway, they could have used this, but they didn't. The North Polar projection was the better way to go, because it keeps the continents in a familiar shape. Because most, like I said earlier, most land masses are in the northern hemisphere. They're not in the southern. Okay, and just to show you that just because somebody puts something on a flag, it doesn't mean that it's absolute literal representation of anything. This is the Canadian flag, adopted in 1965, all right? And it has the awesome maple leaf at its center. But this is not what an actual maple leaf looks like. This is a very common maple leaf. As you can see, the two are not exact. The Canadian flag is a stylized representation of what a real maple leaf looks like. It's not meant to be an actual, literal representation. And I don't know of anybody going out there talking about massive maple leaf conspiracies because the Canadian flag has what a real maple leaf looks like, yet the one we've all seen must be some sort of conspiracy. Now, that is the exact logic flat earthers use when they're using the UN flag as a line of evidence for flat earth. And when you look at it like this, you just realize how stupid it really is. All right, now here's a list of references from all the pictures that I had in the presentation, except for the drawings I made those. And Google Earth, obviously, I didn't make. So I hope that helped you understand why just because somebody draws something in a stylized manner doesn't mean it's actually depicting reality in any way, shape, or form. So that's it. Good luck.